The kitchen felt colder than usual that night. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound echoing through the silence, and yet it felt deafening. David stood in the middle of the room, phone clenched in his hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His heart pounded against his ribs as if trying to break free. A notification blinked once, and then it was gone. Blocked. For a second, David thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. He unlocked the screen again, swiping through the apps, refreshing, reopening. But it was the same everywhere. No messages, no calls, no access. His wife of 8 years, Emma, had blocked him on her girls' trip. His throat tightened, dry as dust, as the weight of the reality pressed against him. He whispered into the empty room, his voice trembling. "Blocked? She blocked me?" The words felt foreign, absurd, but the silence of the house answered back, heavy and merciless. Just 2 days ago, Emma had kissed him goodbye at the door, suitcase in hand, smiling that too-practiced smile, promising she needed a little time with friends to recharge. David had believed her, or maybe he had forced himself to believe her. But now, staring at his phone like it was a weapon turned against him, the truth began to crawl out of the shadows. The air felt thick, suffocating. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, his pulse a wild drumbeat of panic and disbelief. He walked over to the counter and leaned against the cold marble, the chill seeping into his skin. Every corner of the house screamed of her absence. The empty chair at the dining table, the untouched coffee mug by the sink, the faint trace of her perfume still clinging to the hallway. All of it felt like a ghost of the life they had shared, now fractured by a single, devastating act. David's mind raced. Why would she block him? What was she hiding? The idea struck like lightning. She didn't want him to see something. She didn't want him to know. He closed his eyes, gripping the phone tighter, his thoughts spiraling into the worst possibilities. Images of her laughing with someone else, her face lit up by another man's attention, her phone clutched in secrecy. It all stabbed at him with unbearable sharpness. In that moment, David knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. The block wasn't the first sign. Deep down, David knew that. The truth had been whispering to him for months, but he had chosen silence over confrontation, trust over suspicion. Now every little memory returned like puzzle pieces he had ignored, forming an image he no longer wanted to see. It started with the phone. At first, Emma had been casual, leaving it face up on the table, laughing at memes she'd share with him. But lately, she kept it glued to her hand even during dinner. The screen always flipped down whenever David entered the room. A notification would buzz. She'd glance quickly, and then the brightness of her smile would dim. He remembered one night in particular. They had been watching a movie together, her favorite rom-com, the kind she always begged him to sit through. Halfway through, her phone buzzed. She excused herself with a little laugh and stepped into the hallway. David could hear her voice, low, hushed, carrying a softness he hadn't heard directed at him in months. When she returned, she brushed it off. "Just Sarah from work." Her eyes avoided his. Then there were the dinners. Once Emma used to light up their evenings with stories about her day, her boss's ridiculous habits, a co-worker's drama, or her weekend plans. But in recent weeks she grew quieter. The laughter felt rehearsed. The way her hand touched his felt rushed, like a habit rather than affection. At their last dinner before her trip, David had reached for her hand across the table. She had held it briefly, then pulled away as though burned. The memory replayed now in his mind, sharp and bitter. Even her hugs had changed. Gone were the warm embraces where she lingered in his arms. Now her hugs felt like a formality, quick, shallow, cold, and then the lies wrapped in small excuses. "Sorry, late from work. Just a quick call with a client. Need some space?" "David, don't overthink it." Each phrase had carved into him. But he had told himself what every loving husband tells himself. She's just stressed. It's just a phase. Things will get better. But the biggest betrayal was the suitcase. The night before her trip, David had helped her pack. Emma had laughed, brushing him off when he teased about how many outfits she was taking. Later, after she went to bed, he passed by the hallway and saw the suitcase left half open. He bent down, adjusting a strap, and the scent of her perfume hit him. Strong, deliberate, not the light spray she wore daily. This was her special fragrance, the one she wore only on anniversaries or nights out. Why would she need that on a casual girls' trip? The unease gnawed at him, but he forced a smile the next morning when she kissed him goodbye. "Don't worry, love," she said, tucking her hair behind her ear. "It's just me and the girls. I'll be back before you even miss me." But David had already missed her. Not the Emma standing in front of him, suitcase in hand, but the Emma who used to lean on his shoulder at night, who texted him selfies in the morning with messy hair and sleepy eyes, who laughed at his terrible jokes. That Emma felt like a memory now, fading with each passing day, and as the door shut behind her that morning, David had stood in the empty living room, an unshakable knot forming in his chest. He didn't know it then, but that kiss at the doorway wasn't a promise. It was a farewell. David had always believed that trust was the backbone of marriage. He clung to that belief like a lifeline, convincing himself that Emma's distance was temporary, a phase something stress or fatigue would eventually wash away. But deep inside, his instincts were restless, gnawing at him like an unspoken truth. And after being blocked, those instincts screamed louder than ever. For hours, David sat at the kitchen table with his phone in hand, replaying every interaction over the past few weeks. The words, the looks, the subtle changes, they all twisted together into a knot of suspicion that left his chest heavy. He remembered the way Emma had hugged him before leaving for the trip. Her embrace had been fleeting, her smile too polished, her eyes shifting just a little too quickly. And then her words, "Don't overthink it, David." He realized now that people only said that when there was something to overthink. The signs piled up like evidence he couldn't ignore. The late-night work calls, the sudden habit of showering right after coming home, the missing laughter in their living room, replaced with long silences, and the glow of her phone. It all pointed in one direction. At first, David tried to fight it. He told himself to calm down, to not let paranoia ruin his sanity. But the image of Emma with someone else kept crashing through his thoughts, relentless and unforgiving. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her leaning close to a stranger, whispering secrets that used to belong only to him. Finally, he broke. He scrolled through her social media, every platform, every post, desperate for a clue. But the block had cut him off from everything. She had vanished from his digital world, erasing herself as though their marriage meant nothing. The betrayal burned deeper. That night, David sat in their bedroom, staring at the half of the bed where Emma usually slept. The sheets were still neatly tucked, untouched since she'd left. He ran a hand over the fabric, the emptiness heavy with absence. His chest tightened as tears stung his eyes, but anger quickly followed. "Who are you with, Emma?" he whispered to the dark room. "Who did you trade us for?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, yet echoing in every corner of his mind. The next morning he couldn't hold it in anymore. He called her once, twice, 10 times. Each time the call went straight to voicemail. Finally she answered with a shaky laugh, her voice distant, muffled by background noise. "It's just the girls, David. You're worrying too much." But her tone was wrong. The way her voice cracked, the faint hesitation before she spoke. It wasn't the voice of someone with nothing to hide. It was the voice of someone covering a wound, someone burying a secret. David's hand trembled around the phone as he forced himself to reply calmly. "Just the girls." "Yes," she said quickly. "Don't you trust me?" And that was the breaking point. His silence stretched longer than her answer, and in that silence, he realized the truth. He wanted to trust her, but trust without honesty was nothing more than self-destruction. When the call ended, David didn't feel reassured. He felt hollow. The suspicion that had been a shadow now stood in front of him, undeniable. And for the first time, he let himself admit it. Emma was hiding something. The mind can doubt, but her proof cuts deeper than any suspicion ever could. David couldn't rest. The silence of the house pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. He walked from room to room, his heart refusing to settle, his thoughts circling back to the same question: what is she hiding? That's when his eyes landed on the laptop sitting quietly on the desk in their study. Emma rarely used it anymore. Her phone had become her world. But David remembered that once, long ago, she had synced her accounts to this computer. His hands trembled as he opened the lid. The glow of the screen lit up the dark room, his reflection staring back at him like a stranger. For a moment he hesitated. He wanted to slam it shut, to choose ignorance over confirmation. But something stronger pushed him forward. He typed in the password, the one they had shared since the beginning of their marriage. His chest ached when it worked on the first try. That small detail felt like a cruel irony. He still knew her, but not in the way that mattered anymore. The screen loaded slowly. His fingers moved through folders, clicking aimlessly at first, then with growing urgency. And then he found it. A hidden folder buried under layers of cloud backups and notifications he had never noticed before. The messages were there, waiting like daggers. Her words spilled across the screen, not to him but to someone else. A name stood out immediately. Ryan. David's breath caught in his throat as he clicked. Line after line appeared, their conversations raw and undeniable. I can't wait to see you when I'm away. Don't text too much, he gets suspicious. This trip is our chance. Each sentence struck like a hammer, splintering his chest. His hands shook violently as he scrolled further, the betrayal cutting deeper with every word. Emma wasn't just distant, she was planning. She wasn't just hiding. She was living a double life. He saw flirty emojis, late-night confessions, even half-joking plans of a future that didn't include him. His eyes blurred, not from the screen's glow, but from the tears that forced their way out. He wiped them away angrily, his jaw tightening. The room seemed to spin. His ears rang as if the world around him had gone silent, except for the screaming inside his head. The phone calls, the secrecy, the suitcase, the perfume, it all aligned now, forming a cruel and perfect picture. Emma had betrayed him, and she hadn't even tried to hide it well. She had trusted technology to keep her secrets, but truth always finds a crack to slip through. David leaned back in the chair, his body trembling, his chest hollow. He thought about the nights they had shared in this very house, the vows they had whispered, the future they had built together, all of it reduced to lies in a hidden folder. His hand hovered over the trackpad, scrolling slowly through the final messages. And then he saw the one that broke him completely. Don't worry, Ryan, he'll never know. He trusts me too much. The words echoed in his mind like a cruel joke. He slammed the laptop shut, his breath ragged, his fists clenched. The truth was no longer suspicion. It was undeniable, merciless, final. And with it, David felt something inside him shatter beyond repair. The airport was alive with noise. Rolling suitcases, flight announcements echoing through the speakers, families reuniting with laughter and hugs. But for David, everything felt muted, like the world had turned into a distant hum. He stood near the baggage claim, hands in his pockets, shoulders squared. His heart beat steadily, not with panic anymore, but with a cold, steady resolve. The storm inside him had burned itself out, leaving behind something sharper, clarity. Emma stepped off the escalator, dragging her suitcase behind her. She scanned the crowd, her eyes searching, expecting him to be there with open arms. At first, she smiled faintly, but when her gaze landed on David, standing still, watching her with unreadable eyes, the smile faltered. Her steps slowed. The confidence she wore like a mask seemed to crack as she approached. "David," she said softly, almost a whisper swallowed by the chaos around them. "You're here." He didn't answer. He simply watched, his silence heavier than any words. Emma shifted uncomfortably, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I was going to call. The trip was blocked me," David finally said, his voice low, steady, each syllable deliberate. "On your trip. Blocked me. Your husband." The color drained from her face. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She clutched the handle of her suitcase tighter, her knuckles white. I didn't mean, you didn't mean to get caught." David interrupted, his voice cutting through her excuses like a blade. He didn't raise his tone, didn't need to. The calmness in his words carried more weight than anger ever could. Emma's eyes widened, panic flickering across her face. "It wasn't what you think. I was just what?" David asked, his gaze unwavering. "Just laughing with Ryan? Just planning a future without me? Just lying every single night while I sat in the same house waiting for the woman I thought I married?" Her lips trembled, tears threatening to spill. She reached out a hand toward him, desperate. "Please, let me explain. It was a mistake. I still love you, David, I swear." He took a single step back, shaking his head slowly. "No, you loved the trust I gave you. You loved the safety of my silence. But love doesn't survive lies, and trust doesn't come back once it's broken." Around them, travelers walked by, oblivious to the war shattering between two people standing in the middle of a crowded terminal. To the strangers, it was just another couple having a tense exchange. But for David and Emma, it was the end of everything. Emma's tears finally fell. She dropped her suitcase, the sound echoing sharply on the tile floor. "I made a mistake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, give me another chance." "I'll fix it." David's eyes softened, but only for a moment. He saw her, not the woman in front of him, desperate and guilty, but the woman she used to be, the one who once called him her home. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone who had traded honesty for secrecy, love for betrayal. "I saw everything," David said quietly, his voice trembling with grief, but firm with conviction. "The messages, the lies, the plans. I can't unsee it, Emma. I can't unknow it." Her sobs grew louder now, drawing a few glances from passers-by, but David didn't move to comfort her. "Not this time. You blocked me," he repeated, his voice almost a whisper now. "Not just on your phone. You blocked me from our life, from the truth, from the marriage we built together." Emma shook her head furiously, reaching for him again, but David stepped further back. His chest rose and fell, his heart heavy but his resolve unshaken. "This isn't about forgiveness anymore," he said. "It's about respect. And you lost that the moment you chose him over us." The silence that followed was crushing. Emma's sobs filled the space between them, but David's stillness was louder, final. At last he turned. Without another word, he walked toward the exit, the sliding glass doors opening before him. Behind him, he could hear Emma calling his name, her voice breaking, but he didn't stop. As the doors closed, the noise of the terminal rushed back in, the laughter, the announcements, the footsteps. Life moved on. But for David, something had ended forever. The cool night air hit David as he stepped out of the terminal, but it did little to ease the burning in his chest. He walked slowly, each step heavier than the last, the echo of Emma's sobs still lingering behind him. For a moment, he paused on the curb, watching as taxis pulled up and families reunited with warm embraces. Life was happening all around him, children laughing, couples holding hands, travelers greeting loved ones with joy. And in the middle of it all, he stood alone, carrying the shattered pieces of a life he thought was unbreakable. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, and the memories rushed in. Their wedding day, her laugh echoing under the white lights. The nights they stayed up talking until dawn. The quiet mornings when she'd rest her head on his shoulder, whispering, "You're my home." But those memories now felt like photographs burned at the edges, familiar yet ruined. Touched forever by betrayal, David whispered to himself, voice raw but steady. "Love without trust is nothing," and he knew it was true. Trust wasn't just another part of marriage, it was the foundation. And when the foundation cracked, the whole house fell. Emma hadn't just made a mistake, she had made a choice. A choice to lie, to deceive, to block him not only on her phone, but from the truth of their life together. As he stood there, David realized that the pain wasn't just about losing Emma. It was about losing the illusion he had clung to for months. He had ignored the signs, silenced his own instincts, because he loved her too much to believe she could betray him. But love, he now understood, could blind a person just as much as it could heal them. He exhaled slowly, letting the weight fall from his shoulders. A strange calm settled over him, not joy, not relief, but clarity. He wasn't walking away from Emma. He was walking toward himself, toward dignity, toward the life he still deserved. The betrayal would follow him like a shadow, he knew. Some wounds never truly disappear, but shadows only exist because light is present. And somewhere ahead, beyond the grief, there was still light waiting for him. With that thought, David turned toward the parking lot, his steps steady now. Behind him, the noise of the airport faded into nothing, leaving him with silence. But this time, the silence didn't suffocate. It freed him. If you've listened this far, maybe David's story touched something in you. Maybe you've trusted someone blindly, only to feel the sting of betrayal. Or maybe you're carrying doubts right now, the kind that keep you awake at night, questioning the person lying beside you. Here's the truth. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It changes you. It teaches you that love without trust is only an illusion, a fragile glass that shatters the moment lies are dropped into it. But it also teaches you strength. Strength to walk away. Strength to choose yourself when someone else refuses to choose you. So let me ask you, if you were in David's place, what would you do? Would you forgive or would you walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who might need the reminder you deserve honesty, you deserve loyalty, and you deserve a love that doesn't need excuses. Stay strong.